And for those of you who are not familiar, which I can't imagine that there are too many people right now who haven't at least heard something about Lori and her missing children. Um, but I just wanted to really go in depth and do a deep dive. This story has fascinated me since early 2019. I guess as a mother myself, I just couldn't imagine what was going on with her when I first heard the story. It didn't make any sense to me why she couldn't either produce her children or inform authorities of their whereabouts. It was just such a weird story to me. And the more I heard about it and the more time went on, I just went totally down the rabbit hole with it. And I'm literally fascinated by just the entire situation. It's a sad story. Um, and the story's definitely not over. So when I say a complete timeline, it's as complete as I could possibly make it up to now, but there's so much that we don't know. There's so many gaps. There's so much that's going on. And I'm sure we will be finding out more in the future as we've started finding out a little more now in court documents and papers. Now that Lori is having to face the music. But let me not get too carried away. Let me just start at the beginning. So, Lori Vallow Daybell was a member of a dangerous doomsday cult with extreme religious beliefs, including things like she was a prophet sent to Earth to eradicate zombies before leading the chosen 144,000 people into a new millennium. And this is real. Like, this woman really believed this. Um, in the weeks before her children, Joshua J.J. Vallow, who was 7 years old when he went missing, and Tylee Ryan, her daughter, who was 16 years old, um, they were missing when I first heard about the story. And we later found out that they were both killed in September of 2019. And actually, I think I said it was early 2019 when I first heard the story. No, it was early 2020, because I remember us being in the throes of the depths of the pandemic, and I would just, read stories about Lori and all of her shenanigans and all of the different players who were involved in her life. And it was just fascinating to me. But so I misspoke. I first heard about it in early 2020, and we found out later in 2020 that the children were actually killed in September 2019. But in the weeks before they were killed in September 2019, Lori had told friends that she believed that both of them had turned into zombies. And this may sound weird to the average person. I'm not here to go deep into religion or, make any remarks about any particular religion, but Lori was a lifelong member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the LDS Church. We also refer to them as Mormons. And this doomsday cult that she seemed to feel herself to be some sort of leader of is an offshoot of the LDS Church. And I'll just preface this by saying that I've always had issues with Mormons and the LDS Church because of the homophobia, sexism, and racism that I've always seen attached to their beliefs. And, they try to say that they're not racist, they're not homophobic, they're not sexist. Um, but those attitudes do exist. If you talk to former LDS members, they'll say that it's what was taught to them by church leaders. And of course, they're more settled now. It's not politically correct to be homophobic or sexist. it seems like racism is coming back in style, but those things normally are frowned upon. So they're much more so about it, but I'm sure it's still there. Their leader, their founder, was a man named Joseph Smith. He was a known pedophile, and many of you may have heard of Brigham Young University. He was, he's one of their renowned members. He was an extreme racist, and if you want to look into the LDS Church and their history, I'm sure you'll do that, and you can find out that what I'm saying is true. But the LDS Church and their doctrine and much of their doctrine, I think, gave way to the formation of this cult that Lori and her now husband, Chad Daybell, were members and organizers in. Chad actually believes that he's some sort of God. And the LDS Church teaches that in the afterlife, LDS members, in the men in particular, will become gods in another universe. And Chad Daybell, who was an author of these supposedly fiction novels about the end times, but they were fiction. Wink, wink. He really actually believed what he was writing, but he couldn't, for fear of being kicked out of the church, try to present his beliefs as facts. So he presented his beliefs about the end of time in books and labeled them as fiction. But Chad sort of tweaked that LDS belief about the afterlife and men becoming gods to fit his narrative that he was some sort of god. And I don't know if he convinced Lori that she was a goddess, or if he supported her belief that she already had that she was some sort of goddess. And there were rumors about Chad being excommunicated from the church for his religious beliefs that were outside of the official Mormon LDS church doctrine. But there is just rumors. I don't think that really happened because, he had been seen at church in 2019, even after his wife died, fulfilling his calling in his local ward. So I don't think Chad was excommunicated for his far out beliefs. So I'm surprised that there are people out there who are shocked that this Doomsday cult sprang up off the Mormon church, because there's been so many cults to spring up as offshoots of the Mormon religion, some infamously so. But I don't want to go off into a tangent about that. But I do feel that people knew what was going on with Chad and his beliefs, and especially people in the church, and they just turned a blind eye to it. They did nothing to interfere with his teachings. He was a popular speaker on the LDS circuit, and his cult that he was growing of the 144,000, there was nothing done, it seems, to interfere with his plans for that. And back during the time when the children were still considered to be missing, there was global attention trying to find the whereabouts of the children. And during that time, Chad and Lori were actually attending church regularly in Hawaii, attending an LDS church, and not a single person in that state, because for a period, Chad and Lori's whereabouts were not known when they were in Hawaii, but they were going to church, and people in the church knew that the authorities were trying to find them in their missing children, in Lori's missing children, and no one reported seeing them in church at that time. So I just say all that to say, I really feel like there should be no surprise that this sort of doomsday cult could grow in the LDS setting. Former LDS members have stated that it's a religion that's built off of inspiration and being spoken to by God, and that it's not uncommon for followers like Chad and Lori to believe that they're truly special or some sort of God within themselves, and that they would be reincarnated and have that they've had previous lives together, and that they will have lives together in the afterlife. Um, it's really some weird thoughts, if you ask me. Lori was actually preparing for the end of the world by storing water, food, and medical supplies. She believed that she was one of only 144,000 people that would survive this pending doomsday. And I should note that doomsday was supposed to have been July 22nd, 2020. And it came and went, and we're all still here. But she was actively stocking up on things um, that she thought she could lose access to in some sort of major apocalyptic event. It's um, it's weird. Chad would ignore the leaders of his church, people would say, because he felt that he was a true prophet. And, he made up these stories and sold books for a living. And although his books, like I said, were fiction, Lori's nephew has given interviews where he said that Lori believed the scenarios that Chad wrote about in his books about the end of the world. And even though they were labeled as fiction, um, they weren't viewed as fiction in the eyes of the people in the Doomsday cult. Um, One of Lori's friends, a lady named April Raymond, had an interview on 2020, and she said that Lori was convinced that the end of the world was coming soon, and that she would be one of the ones to survive. Um, April Raymond said that Lori's brother, Alex Cox, remember that name, also became involved in this Doomsday cult group, whatever you want to call it, and that they would try to recruit others to become members of the 144,000 that they believe would survive. She said that Lori believed she would survive, but she never actually mentioned the fate of her kids. She said Lori was a super fan of Chad as a doomsday author before she met him and eventually married him. So we'll go through the timeline, but I question how long Chad and Lori had actually been communicating, given that she was this major fan of his. Um, Lori's friend Melanie Gibb said that they met at a conference in, I think it was October 2018. But I personally believe that even maybe that was the first time they saw each other in person. But I believe that Lori and Chad had been communicating to each other prior to 2018, prior to that first meeting that Melanie Gibb thought she witnessed them, getting introduced to each other at the first time. I think maybe they pulled the wool over her eyes a little bit and they already knew each other, but I have nothing to back that up or support that claim other than just my intuition and belief. Um, it's funny though that all of Chad and Lori's friends and cult members lard up once we realized that the kids were actually dead. They were found in Lori's husband, Chad Daybell's backyard, buried in the backyard. Once the kids' bodies were found, all of their little doomsday cult members and friends went silent, went disappeared, and lawyered up. So um, I feel like a lot of people knew a lot about what was going on, and no one said anything to save these poor kids. As we go through the timeline, we'll discuss things that happened, which just made me believe that Lori and Chad had been planning to get rid of her kids for a long time. I think maybe even years before they actually went through with it in 2019. Um, it's really sad, but Lori Vallow used her religion to justify greed, um, extremely narcissistic behavior. This is one of the most narcissistic people I've ever read or heard about. And she used religion to justify her behavior, and ultimately the murder of her kids. She's in jail now, and I just don't understand how she can sleep at night. We'll get to that part, but the judge in her case deemed her incompetent to um, participate in her defense at the moment. And a lot of people say she's malingering or, pretending to be crazy and that she's crazy like a fox. And being unable to participate in her defense right now, um, being deemed incompetent, that's not a permanent status. It just puts everything on hold until they can try to treat her and get her competency to a place where she can participate in her trial. But I don't think she's pretending. I really believe she has some sort of mental psychotic break. Even the religious beliefs that she had, and we all have to have faith. As a Christian, I know we believe in some wild stories, but I view them more as allegories or, fables for life, more so than fact. But she identified with this doomsday religion to the point of justifying killing her kids. I think she may be incompetent right now because being in isolation, being away from the influence of Chad, someone who supported her wild beliefs and her narcissistic thoughts of being some sort of god or goddess. He's not there to boost her head up, to support those beliefs that she had. I feel like she probably is incompetent right now. She is probably in a very bad mental state, as she should be. I don't understand how she could be human and not be crazy right now, living with what was done to her children. But we'll get to that. So let's just start from the beginning. And again, I don't think we really even know when the beginning was, but as of right now, we're calling 2018 the beginning. And on April 3rd, 2018, Tylee's father, Joseph Ryan, who was Lori's third husband, died. He was found dead in his apartment. He'd been there for some time before he was found. And authorities notified Lori um, of his death, being that, Tylee was his daughter. And it's weird to me that Lori chose to hold on to that information and not notify Joseph Ryan's sister, who she had a relationship with, um, even after she was no longer married to Joe. She waited, I don't know, weeks or months after Joseph had already been cremated and put away to even let his family know that he was dead. And even with that, there's something shady because it was like she tried to change the paperwork to mislead his Joseph's sister about the day she was actually notified of his death, to try to make it seem like she didn't know about it for as long as she did before telling them. So even with the death of her third husband, there's something shady around that. But it was saying that, he died of a heart attack, I think. October 26, 2018, this is when Lori and Chad supposedly met for the first time at a Preparing the People event in St. George, Utah. And Preparing the People is one of those prepper groups. They're preparing for, I don't know what they're preparing for. They store food, water. I don't know if it's similar to the Doomsday cult, in where they think some sort of apocalyptic event is going to happen and the world's going to come to an end and they need to be prepared. I really haven't researched it a lot because I don't like to go down the rabbit hole of really off the path and sort of psychotic beliefs, because I don't want that sort of stuff infiltrating my mind and my brain. So I haven't done much research on preparing the people, but I know that they're a prepper group. And Chad was popular on those circuits. He would sell his books and would be a frequent speaker at those sort of conferences. And Melanie Gibb thinks that that's where Lori and Chad met for the first time. Court papers that have come out indicate that it was around this time when Chad and Lori began discussing their religious beliefs to justify killing Chad's wife, Tammy Daybell, and Lori's kids, JJ and Tylee, because they have some sort of proof that 4 days after that October the 26th Preparing a People event, Chad shared his quote unquote hit list with Lori, showing the light and dark family members that they both have. November 26, 2018, Chad and Lori made their first appearance together on the Preparing a People podcast called Time to Warrior Up. The two appeared with several others like Jason Mao, Melanie Gibb, and other people who like to focus on end times and the end of the world and preparing for that day to come. 2019, January 2019, Lori received an email from Chad with the subject line, "Demon with the name Nick Snyder," according to Dateline NBC. And Keith Morrison with Dateline NBC, you have to listen to his podcast. He has just a total podcast dedicated to this Lori Vallow story. And he's done a great job of, trying to sort out all this mess, Lori's connections and what she believed and who her victims were, who her co-conspirators were, and, what happened to the children. So a demon with the name Nick Snyder was referring to Lori's then current husband. Well, it was her current husband at the time, her fourth husband, Charles Vallow. And Chad had convinced Lori that Charles' soul had been replaced with a demon named Nick Snyder. And a few days after that, January 28th, while Charles was on a business trip, Lori transferred $10,000 out of his account into one of her accounts and 20,000 Enterprise Rent-A-Car points to her personal account, according to divorce documents related to her divorce from Charles. And they were going to get divorced, but then they decided to work on it again. So that's where the divorce paperwork had come from. They never actually got divorced. January 29th, so the next day, so she transferred $10,000 on that 28th. On the 29th, she transferred an additional $25,000 out of one of Charles's business accounts. And she called him and she told him that she is a God sent to carry out the work of the 144,000 at Christ's second coming, and that she would kill him if he got in her way. She told him that Jesus was headed to Earth in July 2020. So January 29th, 2019, Lori told Charles that she would kill him. The next day, she called him again and told him that she planned to kill him when he returned home, and she had an angel waiting to help dispose of his body. Now, that angel, I believe, was her brother, Alex Cox. Lori repeatedly called Charles by the name Nick Snyder, and she said that Nick killed Charles and had taken his identity. She was telling this to Charles. And Charles was going through to the authorities, telling him what Lori was saying and doing. Um, he told them that she was completely out of her mind. He reported her to her bishop at the church. He tried to tell her family. She would lie to her family about him, and she totally turned her family totally against her. So they wouldn't even take his phone calls or listen to anything he was saying. But he told Gilbert, Arizona police that, she had had a mental break, that she'd taken money from him, that she locked him out of the house, that she'd taken his vehicle. Um, the police actually enabled her when she went by the police station because she knew that Charles had called them. They told her to hurry up and leave because he had gotten paperwork to put her in like a 5150 mental hold, and they let her leave the police station so that she could escape being held. And they did some sort of evaluation on her and found her to be sane and competent at that time, and they actually helped her to evade Charles. This man did everything he could to reach out for help, um, and no one would help him. February 10th, 2019, Lori vanished for 58 days, leaving both Charles and the kids. Charles had no idea where she went, and it was revealed that she had actually gone to Hawaii during that time. And while she was gone, Charles removed Lori as the beneficiary of a $1 million life insurance policy and named his sister, Kay Woodcock, who is actually JJ, Lori and Charles's adopted son's natural grandmother. JJ was the biological child of Kay's son and a woman who were unable to care for JJ. And Lori and Charles adopted JJ. And, you know, Kay Woodcock and her husband Larry, they say that Lori was the perfect mom up until 2018 when things just took a turn for the worse, and she just became this weird religious zealot nut. And I don't even want to call her religious zealot because the beliefs that she was espousing weren't about some higher being, but more about herself being a god. Um, so I won't say a religious zealot, but she just had some really wild beliefs about herself and the end of the world and her role in that. Um, so, Charles removes Lori as the beneficiary from his insurance policy. Sorry, I got distracted. And, I actually wish he would have let her know that he had done that because maybe then she wouldn't have killed him. Because I really think she killed him for the insurance. She had her brother kill him for the insurance money that she thought she was in line to get because she totally flipped the lid after she had her brother kill him. And then she finds out that Kay was the beneficiary. She blew a gasket. So July, fast forward from February when Lori vanished, Charles removes her as the beneficiary from the insurance policy. Um, July 11th, 2019, Charles was shot and killed by Lori's brother, Alex Cox, who said the shooting was in self-defense. Charles was filmed telling police that Lori was out of her mind, like I said, months before he was killed. He claimed that she threatened to murder him because he was possessed by an evil spirit. He told the police that. He even told his attorney at the time that if anything happens to him, Lori and Alex did it. Well, Alex did it on July 11th, told the police it was self-defense, and they bought the story. Hook, line, and sinker. They were never arrested for Charles's death. He was shot and killed in Lori's house that Charles had rented for her and the kids. He came to pick up JJ one morning, and he was ambushed by Alex and Lori. I don't think anyone really knows what actually happened because everyone who was there at the time is dead except for Lori. Tylee's dead. They killed Charles. JJ's dead, and we'll get to it in the timeline. But Alex Cox is also dead. So who knows what actually happened in that house and who pulled the trigger? But Alex said he shot Charles in self-defense, in because Charles and Lori had gotten into a fight, and Alex confronted him, and he said that Charles hit him in the head with a baseball bat, and so he shot him, which I find that very hard to believe because on the police body cam, you see Alex holding his head, but you don't see any blood. He's coherent. Charles Vallow was a former pro baseball player. If he had hit Alex in the head with a baseball bat, Alex wouldn't have had a hit. Alex wouldn't have been able to stand there and tell the police what happened. Alex would have been severely impaired if Charles had hit him in the head with a baseball bat. Why the police believe this story and let Alex and Lori walk away scot-free at the time for killing that man, I will never understand. But, at that time, she got away with it. And so that was July 11th. July 30th, 2019, text messages between Chad and Lori were exchanged regarding death percentages. Who knows what that means? Something that Chad made up. Death percentages for Tammy and JJ. The discussions about death percentages were described under the conspiracy to murder Tammy Daybell charges in the indictment. Lori and Chad discussed the fact that Tammy was in limbo and her spirit was possessed by a woman named Viola. So, you see a pattern here. Charles was possessed by a demon named Nick Schneider. Tammy was possessed by a woman named Viola. They're making it up as they go along to justify getting rid of their spouses, is what it seemed like to me. August 9th, 2019, JJ's service dog, JJ was autistic, and he had a service dog, and his service dog was put up for sale August 9th. This is why I say that, that Lori and Chad had a plan, and who knows how long they'd actually been planning, because why would she just sell her son's service dog? Her autistic son needed his service dog. Why would she sell it? August 16th, Lori changes the deposit of Tylee's money for Social Security benefits that she got because of the death of her father, Joseph Ryan, from Tylee's bank account to her own personal account. What was Lori preparing for? Why was she making these financial maneuvers? Why was she maneuvering that way with Tylee's Social Security benefits from Tylee's account to her account? Why did she sell JJ's dog? September the 1st, Lori, Tylee, JJ, and her brother Alex moved from Arizona to Rexburg, Idaho. It was also during September when Larry and Kay reported JJ missing, because after Lori realized that she wasn't getting anything for Charles's death, she stopped allowing JJ to communicate with Kay and Larry, his grandparents. They described her allowing him to talk to them, but it seemed like he was being coached or told what to say, and the conversations were very limited. And then all of a sudden, they just stopped. She just stopped even allowing him to talk to Kay and Larry, and then they just disappeared off the face of the earth. They moved to Rexburg, Idaho, without letting anyone know where they were going. Lori has another son, her oldest child, Colby Ryan, who is still living. She didn't even let him know that they were moving. So, yeah, Kay and Larry reported JJ missing in September. September 3rd, Lori did enroll JJ into elementary school in Idaho, but less than 3 weeks later, um, she unenrolled him, saying that he would be homeschooled. So, enrolled in school September 3rd, JJ. September 8th, Tylee, JJ, Lori and Alex visited Yellowstone National Park. September 8th is an important date in this timeline because there's a picture when the kids were missing. That's the picture that was circulated. The picture of Tylee, Alex, and JJ at Yellowstone National Park, because September 8th is actually the last day that Tylee was ever seen alive. Officials say that no one ever saw her alive again after September the 8th. That day is also important because Chad Daybell signed an application with Tammy to increase Tammy's life insurance to the maximum amount allowed on the policy. And also, Chad Googled South-Southwest wind and visited a website entitled "What is the definition of South-Southwest wind direction?" This brilliant end-time author couldn't even figure out, what direction the wind was blowing in. But why did he need to know that information? What was he planning to do where he needed to know what direction the wind would be blowing? And this is all on the last day that Tylee was seen alive. I don't want to jump too far ahead in the timeline, but Tylee, when she was found buried in Chad's backyard, her body had been burned, decapitated. So, they cut her head off and buried her in the backyard. I think he also burned her in the backyard, and that's why he wanted to know what direction the wind would be blowing, because he didn't want the scent to carry and for his neighbors to smell the burning flesh of this poor child. It's actually sort of hard to even talk about this, even though, I'm very familiar with the story, followed it all in the news. Just knowing how they planned this to kill these kids. Why would they think God would reward them for killing children? Why would they think that Jesus Christ would, if he was coming back to only save 144,000 people, why would they be in that number? Child murderers. Why? September 9th, the day after the last time anyone ever saw Tylee alive, Alex went to Lori's apartment. His cell phone pinged there at around 3 a.m., the witching hour, up to no good. So 3 a.m. in the morning, it's probably around the time, we don't know when Tylee died. And I think that trip to Yellowstone, Lori is so, just morbid. Like that picture of Tylee, JJ, and Alex, it seemed like a trophy or something for her. Like, I guess one last outing with the family before she killed her kids. Alex's cell phone placed him on Chad's property and in the Daybell's pet cemetery, which is where Tylee's remains were buried. Chad's neighbor said on September 9th that he heard a gunshot. So, did they shoot her first? How did they kill her? We don't know yet. But we do know that they burned her body up and cut her limbs off, including her head. Chad texts Tammy saying he shot a raccoon and buried it in the pet cemetery in their yard. And this is where Tylee was found, in a pet cemetery. They buried her like a dog or a cat. A month later, Tammy mysteriously died as well. So while he was telling her he shot a raccoon, he had plans for her as well. And, not to skip too far ahead, but they killed Tylee sometime late evening of September 8th, early morning of September 9th, and take her out to Chad's property to bury her. Chad covers up the story, telling his wife he shot a raccoon. But a month later, Tammy also died mysteriously. And 2 weeks after Tammy died, Chad and Lori got married in Hawaii. And by this time, the 2 weeks later, JJ had gone missing as well. So Tylee's last sighting September 8th. JJ's last sighting was about 2 weeks after that. His body was also later found on Chad Daybell's property in the backyard near that same pet cemetery where Tylee was buried. So back to the timeline. September 18th, Chad obtains a burner phone. What do they need burner phones for? What are they doing? They're killing people. They're killing children. And then Chad kills his wife. We're going to get to that. But they're planning and plotting. They're buying burner phones. I guess they, like Stringer Bell in The Wire. September 19th, Melanie Gibb, Lori's BFF, co-hosted a religious podcast with Lori at Lori's home in Rexburg. And Melanie was still living in Arizona. And so her and her boyfriend, David Ward, went to Idaho to Lori's house. They recorded this podcast together. And Melanie Gibbs says that shortly after they arrived there, Lori told her that JJ had become a zombie. So I skipped ahead a little before, but JJ's not dead yet when Melanie Gibb and her boyfriend David Ward visit Lori in Idaho on September 19th. September 22nd, Melanie and her boyfriend said that they saw JJ the night of September 22nd. The boyfriend, David Ward, he told law enforcement that late on the night of the 22nd that Melanie, Lori, and him were going to do the podcast, and JJ was acting up. So Lori called Alex to come and take JJ to his apartment. Alex had a unit in the same apartment complex as Lori. And also Lori's niece, Melanie Boudreaux Pawlowski, also had a unit in the same apartment complex. But they said that Alex came and took JJ, and that when Alex returned later that night, he was carrying JJ in his arms, and JJ appeared to be asleep with his head on Alex's shoulder. So, do we know what was going on with JJ then? Was he asleep? Was he already dead? Had he been drugged so that he would go to sleep, so that it would be easier to kill him later? Who knows? But according to the court documents, David Ward said he remembered that moment in particular, seeing Alex with JJ on his head, with his head on Alex's shoulder, because it was such a tender moment between Alex and JJ. The next morning, September 23rd, Melanie's boyfriend, David Ward, asked Lori where JJ was. And Lori told him that JJ had been acting like a zombie and had been crawling on the kitchen cabinet and got on top of the cabinet in between the space between the cabinet and the ceiling. And she said that he had knocked a picture of Jesus off the refrigerator, and that Alex had come and taken JJ. So last time anyone ever saw JJ alive was September the 22nd. September 23rd, per the indictment, Alex took possession of JJ Vallow, and Melanie told police again that the last time that she and her boyfriend saw JJ was the night of the 22nd. So she cooperated the story that her boyfriend told, that when Alex brought JJ back from his apartment, he carried JJ, who appeared to be sleeping, into the apartment with JJ's head on Alex's shoulder. That same day, September 23rd, Alex's phone pinged at Chad's property from 9:55 in the morning to 10:12 in the morning near the pond where JJ's body was later found wrapped in plastic, buried in Chad's backyard. According to the probable cause affidavit, it said on September 23rd, JJ had an unexcused absence. So he didn't go to school on September 23rd. And the last confirmed sighting of JJ was when Melanie and her boyfriend saw him on the 22nd. September 4th, Lori withdrew JJ from school. He had an unexcused absence on the 23rd. The 24th, he was withdrawn. On October the 1st, 2019, Lori rented a 10 by 10 storage unit in Rexburg, and surveillance video at the storage facility shows Lori and a man associated with her. And we don't know if that man is Alex or Chad, but it shows Lori and a man visiting the unit 9 times in October and once in November. Why were they going to the storage unit so often? It said the man who appeared to be Alex came alone several times to the unit. Why was Alex going to the storage unit so much? I mean, sometimes they have footage of Alex and Chad going to the storage unit together. What were they doing? We saw Alex and Chad on the surveillance video going in and out of the storage unit. Alex solo going in and out of the storage unit. Lori and Chad going in and out of the storage unit. What was in that unit? October 2nd, Lori purchased October 2nd, Tammy Daybell is still alive, Chad's wife. October 2nd, Lori purchases a wedding ring on Amazon, later seen on her finger at Chad and Lori's beach wedding in Hawaii. October 2nd is also important because on that day, a bullet hit Brandon Boudreaux. Remember, Brandon Boudreaux is Lori's niece, Melanie Boudreaux Pulowski's ex-husband, who she was in a heated custody battle with about their kids. So someone tried to shoot Brandon on October 2nd. Brandon said that the person was driving the Jeep that Tylee would drive that was registered to Charles Vallow, but was Tylee's vehicle. Mind you, Tylee hadn't been seen since September the 8th. Someone driving her car shot at Brandon Boudreaux. And Boudreaux told the police at that time that he felt like it was Alex, and he felt like it was related to his situation with Lori's niece, Melanie, who was involved in a religious cult with Lori. October 9th, Alex Cox obtained a burner phone, and Tammy Daybell calls 911 to say that a masked man shot at her in the driveway with a paintball gun. And she actually went out to Facebook and posted a message and was informing her neighbors because she wanted them to be careful. She thought it was some sort of prank. She said she got out of her car and a man approached her with a paintball gun and shot at her. But I guess, first of all, it wasn't a paintball gun. It was a real Grendel firearm that this masked person was wearing. This masked man was Alex Cox. For whatever reason, the gun didn't work. So it was a failed attempt on Tammy's life. It either was an attempt on her life or a warning, a reason for her to feel justified, I guess, in Chad increasing her life insurance policy. I don't know. I don't know what went on with Alex not actually being able to shoot her successfully that day. Um, but they weren't done. So on October 18th, Alex was in a church parking lot about 2.5 miles from Tammy and Chad's house on the night of October the 18th. October 19th, the morning of October 19th, Chad calls 911 saying that Tammy had died in her sleep at home. So that night, the night before, Alex is staked out near their house. The next morning, Chad calls 911 and reports his wife dead. November 5th, Chad and Lori get married in Hawaii. The pictures are disgusting of them laughing and carrying on the beach in Hawaii, while at the time her children were quote unquote missing, but she knew they were dead. Chad knew they were dead. His wife had just died 2 weeks before. He claimed peacefully in her sleep, but we know that he killed her, or he had Alex kill her, or Alex helped him kill her, something like that. But the children are dead. His wife is dead. They're cavorting on the beach, getting married like they have not a care in the world. November 26th, the Rexburg Police Department conducts a welfare check for JJ at the request of his grandparents, Larry and Kay Woodcock, and Lori lied to police and told them that JJ was in Arizona with her friend Melanie Gibb, and not to be surprised if they contacted Melanie and she didn't answer because she had taken JJ to the movies to see Frozen 2. Now, I told you, like the picture in Yellowstone of the kids and Alex, I feel like Lori likes to brag a little bit or have trophies. So I don't know if she called herself being funny by saying they were going to see Frozen 2, because in actuality, we know now that JJ was actually buried in Chad's backyard, frozen under the ground in the snow in Idaho in November. So, but she tells police that he's in Arizona with her friend Melanie. With friends like Lori, who needs enemies? She told police that JJ was with her friend Melanie in Arizona and they were at the movies watching Frozen 2. November 27th, the police came back with a warrant to search her house, and when they got there, they realized that Chad and Lori had skipped town. They left in a hurry. Don't know where they went, but on December 1st, Chad and Lori caught a flight to Hawaii on the island of Kauai, and the children weren't with them. So at this point, the children are still missing in everyone's minds, but Chad and Lori go to Hawaii, and they get off the plane, and it's just them. No kids with them. So December 6th, Melanie Gibb finally decides to contact the Rexburg Police Department to say that Chad and Lori called her on November 26th and asked her to lie about the location of JJ. I guess her conscience got to her, and she decided either her conscience or common sense, and she didn't want to be an accessory to whatever shenanigans that she knew that Chad and Lori were up to. So she called the police and told the truth about Lori and Chad asking her to lie to them about JJ's whereabouts. So December 11th, Tammy Daybell's remains were exhumed. Chad quickly had her cremated, but they did exhume her remains to investigate her cause of death. The very next day, Alex Cox, Lori's brother, dies of natural causes, quote unquote, in Gilbert, Arizona. Moving ahead to 2020, January 3rd, Fremont County, Idaho Sheriff Lynn Humphrey said investigators recovered 43 items, including computers, cell phones, journals, documents, and medications, with a warrant that was served on Chad's property. and that they sent all that stuff to an FBI lab for analysis. February 20th, police in Hawaii arrest Lori on a $5 million warrant out of Madison County. And she is charged with 2 felony counts of child desertion and non-support of dependent children. It's important to say that by that time, before she was arrested, she was given until January 30th to produce the children or to let the authorities know where they were. And she blew past that January 30th date, didn't get in contact with authorities, didn't produce the children or anything. And it took them almost a month later to finally arrest her and charge her with desertion and non-support. It was 2 felonies related to the concealment, alteration, and destruction of evidence regarding her 2 children, 7-year-old Joshua J.J. Vallow and 16-year-old Tylee. So Lori's been in jail since March of 2020. June 9th, 2020 was that awful day when the Rexburg Police Department, the FBI, and the Fremont County's Sheriff's Office showed up at Chad Daybell's house with a warrant, a search warrant. And they knew, I feel like, based on the cell phone pings and the analysis of the items that they took from his house when they served the warrant back on January 3rd, by June 9th, when they served him that warrant, they knew exactly where to go to dig up Tylee and JJ, and that's what they did. Within hours of arriving on Chad's property with the warrant, investigators uncovered unidentified human remains, and they brought in a backhoe to dig deeper in the yard, and it took them a couple of days to confirm that the remains were Tylee and JJ. And just the condition of Tylee's body, I just feel like was egregious. It just shows you how much Lori did not care for this child. Chad had no respect for them as Lori's children. It's really upsetting the way they describe Tylee's remains. It's also noteworthy that once they started digging in that backyard, Chad had been sitting in a car across the street watching them, and he called Lori. Or either he took a call. He didn't call Lori. Lori called him from jail where she had been since March. And you can hear it all in his voice. He knew he was caught. He told Lori that the police were there and they were searching the property. And she's like, okay, I'll call you later. And he was like, yeah, you can try. Because he knew his ass was going to jail. You could hear it all in his voice. He knew time was up for him. And he actually tried to flee. He drove off, but the police stopped him. He didn't get far down the road until they were able to take him into custody. So Chad's been in jail since June 9th of last year. And Lori's been in jail since March 9th of last year. So fast forward to May 25th, just a few days ago, Lori and Chad were indicted in the alleged murders of her children, Josh and JJ and Tylee, and Chad was also charged with the death of his wife, Tammy Daybell, on what would have been JJ's 9th birthday. So justice for JJ. Delayed but not denied, hopefully, and it's still delayed, but hopefully it's coming soon. They have been charged with murder for both children, and then Chad also with the murder of his wife. May 27th, a psychological assessment determined that Lori was incompetent to move forward with further court proceedings. The assessment found that at this time the defendant is not competent to proceed and recommends restorative treatment. It's not clear what that restorative treatment would entail, if it's medication, if it's therapy, a combination of both, or where it will occur. Probably at the jail still. She's not going anywhere. She's not getting out of jail. So again, justice delayed but not denied. Like I said at the beginning of the video, some people think Lori's malingering and that she's crazy like a fox. But I don't find it very hard to believe that she may be in an incompetent state right now, because she already was showing signs of having lost her mind, that Charles tried to alert everyone to before they killed him. And once reality set in for her about how her life is going to be now, having murdered her children, yeah, I'm sure she had some sort of mental break. But as long as they can get her to a place where she can stand trial, that's what matters at this point. And it's important to note that the prosecution contested the finding of the report. And so they have to have a hearing that'll be scheduled at a future date. And until then, Lori's case remains on hold. They call it a stay. So her case is on hold while they get her treatment for her mental state. But Chad will move forward. He has a court appearance on June 9th where he has to enter a plea on the murder charges. And like I said, Lori's next court date hasn't been scheduled yet. So murder charges for the children, murder charge for Tammy. Moments after the Idaho filing was made public, the Chandler, Arizona Police Department announced that they submitted conspiracy charges over the July 29th death of Charles Vallow to the Maricopa County Attorney's Office on April 1st, 2021. So we're just waiting for authorities in Arizona to let us know when they're going to charge Lori with murder, or if they're going to charge her with murder. And I definitely feel like those charges are coming. Lori will be charged with conspiracy to commit murder over the death of Charles Vallow. So hopefully there will be justice for Charles as well. I pray for justice for all of Lori and Chad's victims, dead and alive, going back to Joe Ryan, and God knows who else. Charles Vallow, JJ Vallow, Tylee Ryan, Tammy Daybell. It's a long story. We got through the timeline. I will be following this case. There's so many twists and turns and so much information and so many gaps. And like I said, I'm sure we'll learn much more about what actually went on and what happened to these poor children in the future. So at some point, I'll do an update. But I don't expect any of this to go to trial anytime this year. Probably early next year will be when Chad's case goes to trial, and who knows when Lori's will, being that there's a stay right now. And then we have to see what Arizona's going to do about charging Lori with Charles's murder. So this story's far from over. Thanks for bearing with me and hanging in there. And I hope that everyone just says a prayer